Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something really fascinating. It's this story that's, well, it's part cultural rescue mission and part massive academic controversy. And it's all about a set of ancient, super-secret teachings that were never, and I mean never, meant to end up in a book, let alone, for sale.
So let's really get into this, because this isn't just some philosophical thought experiment. This is a real thing. It's the huge paradox right at the center of one of the most ambitious and frankly controversial translation projects we've seen in a long time. I mean, think about it. A project that took the most secret teachings of a tradition and put them up for sale on the open market.
And yeah, again, we are not just talking theory here. We're talking about actual physical books. Thick ones too. Some are almost 700 pages long. And inside you'll find some of the most advanced, some might say extreme, meditation practices ever written down. Stuff like the dark retreat. That's where you meditate in complete, total darkness for weeks. Or even the rainbow body, this incredible idea that a master's physical body can literally dissolve into light when they die. I mean, can you see the problem? Putting this stuff in a book for anyone to read, well, it creates a pretty serious tension, to say the least.
So you've got this massive split. On one side, you have the original setting, right? This incredibly secluded, super-controlled world of hermit yogis. We're talking about knowledge passed down directly, mastered to a hand-picked, prepared student over decades. Then, on the other side, you've got a commercial product, a book with a barcode on it and ISBN number, available to literally anyone on the planet with a credit card. I mean, you just can't get two worlds that are more opposite.
Okay, so the big question is, how on earth did these super-secret teachings end up in a paperback? Well, the story doesn't start where you might think, like in some fancy publisher's office in New York. Nope. It starts in a monastery in India, with a direct and pretty urgent request from the highest authority in the entire Bon tradition.
Yeah, so back in 2013, the head of the Bon lineage, His Holiness the 33rd Menri Trizin, he's the one who kicked this whole thing off. And he had a really serious reason. He was watching the number of these dedicated cave yogis just plummet. And he was genuinely afraid that these incredibly advanced meditation practices were about to vanish from the face of the earth forever. So this whole project, it was a rescue mission.
And look, this wasn't your typical academic translation job. The mandate came with three very, very specific conditions. Okay, so number one, translate it accurately. Get the meaning right. Number two, and this is the real kicker, the translators had to personally do the practices. They had to live them to verify that the instructions actually worked. And third, they had to somehow make these incredibly dense texts understandable for a Western audience. The point was never to create a book for a dusty library shelf. It was all about keeping a living, breathing tradition alive.
And the commitment here, it was just huge. This was not a weekend hobby. We're talking about a project backed by nearly $1 million in donations. Think about that, $935,000. That funding allowed one of the lead translators, the late Harvard psychologist Daniel P. Brown, to completely shut down his clinical practice for more than 3 years just to focus on this.
But here's the twist. In succeeding and actually creating these books, the project created a brand new massive problem. See, it turned these fluid, living teachings into static, physical objects. And by doing that, the books themselves became a source of intense conflict, both from within the tradition and from the outside world.
Okay, so this is really the core of the issue. You have to understand that each one of these books is trying to be three totally different things all at the same time. It's like it has a split personality. First, it's a preservation archive, right? A kind of break glass in case of emergency container for all this knowledge. Then, it's also a practice manual, a how-to guide that's supposed to be used. And finally, it's a public commodity, a product you can buy. And believe me, those three jobs do not play well together. They're almost always in direct conflict.
And you don't have to look far to see this tension. It's literally printed right inside the books. You open it up, and right there on the copyright page, there are these stark warnings. They say, hey, these practices require a qualified teacher. They need proper transmission, and they can be downright dangerous if you're not prepared. So think about that. It's basically a how-to guide that warns you not to do what's inside. Wild, right? So while all this is going on, the project is getting absolutely hammered by critics. We're talking about professional academic translators of Tibetan, and they did not hold back. The accusations were really serious. They pointed to all sorts of grammatical errors, said the translators completely missed common Tibetan idioms, misunderstood core philosophical ideas. I mean, they were saying some passages were translated so badly they were just nonsense. The bottom line from the critics was this: the translations are inaccurate and they're misleading. Ouch. Now, Brown's defense to all of this was always the same.
He'd say, look, we were never trying to create a perfect academic word-for-word translation. The goal wasn't philology, it was functionality. The whole point was to create a usable manual for real practitioners. They wanted to take this incredibly dense, almost shorthand-like text and reorganize it into something a prepared Western student could actually follow, with a teacher, of course.
But that defense just leads us to the biggest and maybe unanswerable question in this whole mess. In a tradition that is this precise, where getting a single syllable wrong can change the entire direction of a practice, can you really separate functionality from accuracy? Is that even possible? Or at this level, are they the exact same thing?
Okay, so this whole fight over accuracy, it actually leads us to the ultimate justification for the project. Because the way the translators framed it, this wasn't about academic squabbles at all. It was about something much, much bigger. We're talking about cultural survival.
Yeah. Daniel Brown constantly put this project in the context of a massive historical catastrophe. He drew a straight line back to the Chinese invasion of Tibet, and he talked about how in a single week something like 100,000 volumes, books all about the nature of the mind, were just burned. He argued that an entire civilization's inner science, its deep understanding of consciousness, was literally reduced to ash.
So if you look at it through that lens, these translations, no matter how flawed or controversial they might be, they stop being just books. They become lifeboats. That's the metaphor. They're these desperate little vessels sent to rescue the last precious cargo from a library that's already on fire, hoping to carry it to a new shore, the West, where maybe, just maybe, it can survive.
What's really wild is that the book itself, the physical object, tells its own part of this story. If you look at the very first editions, the cover listed the original ancient author right next to the modern translators, Daniel P. Brown and Geshe Sonam Gurung.
But then, check this out. In later editions, their names are gone. Poof, wiped from the cover. The book's public face now belongs only to the original author from the lineage. That's not a small change. It's a really powerful statement, right? It's an attempt to put the focus back squarely on the source tradition. And really, this gets to the heart of the paradox of preservation itself. The second you try to save something, you change it. It's like pinning a butterfly to a board. Sure, it's preserved, you can study it forever, but it's not a butterfly anymore, is it? It's not alive and flying. And in the same way, these books might have saved the instructions, but they couldn't save the world they came from.
So at the end of the day, we're left with this one enormous, critical question. Can the wisdom itself survive this journey? Can the essence of these teachings actually make it out of the Himalayan caves, away from the direct master-student relationship, and live on inside a book with a barcode? You know, that's a question that we probably can't answer right now. Only time, and maybe, just maybe, a whole new generation of practitioners will tell.